What's up, everyone? Big NFL Week 15 coming up. We've got Saturday football. We got Sunday football. We got football galore. We got Monday football every day. We're taking a look at the Saturday only slate for this breakdown. The Sunday only coming next. So stick around for that. That'll come out as another separate video. We're really trying to figure out how to do this content. We're doing the Saturday only to start with. And, you know, Burns, BobbyWow, I love a 3-game slate. This is my favorite. This is, I like the smaller slate because you can get ownership is everything. Let's harken back for a second to Monday. I know, seems like forever ago, but we had a 2-game slate, and we talked about on this show the importance of just not being scared to fade some chalk. It's scary as fuck. The chalkier it gets, the scarier it is to fade on these slates, right? And the ultimate spot was Tyreek Hill. Can you fade Tyreek Hill? Gasp, right? Of course not. I've back-tested these type of slates again and again and again. And it is definitely a consistent thing that you want to be underweight the field on the heaviest ownerships. And actually, if you go and back test these, what I noticed is, and I just want to give a little overview before we talk about these games, but what I've noticed is even when you're wrong and you faded somebody, you went below that, it doesn't really affect your outcome. I don't know why, but like I've gone back and done these type of slates where I've let's say Christian McCaffrey was the chalk. And first I run it, let me see on a back test mode, 100% McCaffrey. And I'm hitting a certain top score. What if I go down to 40%? Still hitting the same score. Now, I don't know what the math is behind why that happens, but I think what ends up happening is it's just more important to be heavier on the low-owned play that goes off as opposed to just having so much chalk that you know, you find the way. So that's what I found. So that's a little brief overview of 3-game slates and how they work. Now, let's take a look at this one. Of course, with me as always to help me break this down, the Dream Team, author of Winning the $1 Million Game, Secrets of the DraftKings Millie Maker, Shark Lab, Adam Burns, and of course, multi-time Fanduel Millie Maker winner, Bobby Moneybags, down below. What's up, guys? All right, got to do the intros. So let's take a look at these 3 games here. 3-gamer, and you know, it's a lot of backup quarterbacks on this slate. A lot of backups. Vikings at the Bengals. Backups. Right? Browning looking pretty good as a backup. Nick Mullins. Do you guys know anything about Nick Mullins? I remember he started for somebody a couple of years ago.
49ers, right? Was it San Fran?
I don't remember.
Like he was there at some point.
The 49ers?
Now I'm doubting it.
Somebody will put it in the chat.
It was that. It was the 49ers, and he was nothing special.
No.
Browning on the Bengals. So we've got a 40-point total game there. We've got the 42-pointer between the Colts and the Steelers. Mitch Trubisky stepping in for the injured Pickett. I think that's better for the Steelers offense. Trubisky. Hard to believe he's better than anybody, but I would say he's probably better than Pickett. He looked like shit, though, BobbyWow. He did not look. You told me
he didn't look good. He didn't look good. But he's a guy that can either look terrible or really good. There's no middle ground for Truby.
Why is he throwing up these little floaters? It looked like somebody, like every pass looked like he got hit in the arm when he was throwing it.
That first half was especially rough. I think I saw this stat yesterday. Both Easton Stick and I'm blanking on the other quarterback's name, combined for 7 passing touchdowns yesterday. Kenny Pickett has 6.
Yeah. Kenny Pickett's got 6 on the season. So there we go. And yes, Lance, we are going to be doing a Sunday show as well to follow this one, but it will be a separate show. So that's going to be its own thread. Don't want to get too confusing. No one wants to sit through 2.5 hours of, 2 shows put in one. So actually, maybe people do, but no, we're not going to do that to you. Finally, Broncos at the Lions, 48-pointer. That's the best on paper game of this trifecta. with the lines coming in with the highest team total at 26.25. So that's going to be the team, I think, where a lot of the chalk will be coming from. Maybe. We'll figure it out. So let's just jump right into this thing. We've got the domination station here, guys. And I think the best way to look at a 3-game slate is to really just go position by position, understand, how high, how low, how in between do we want to be with any of these position groups. The first thing I usually try to do is figure out what the chalk is. I'm not really sure here. BobbyWow, is there a chalky quarterback for Saturday? What's going on?
It doesn't look like it. My hunch is Goff and Wilson will probably comprise 65%, 65 to 70% of the ownership.
I think it's tomorrow. No, it's too high.
You don't think so?
No. Unlike the so let's go back to Monday. What happened on Monday? There were like 1 or 2 QBs that were so much better than the rest on paper. Of course, the others did better. So everybody, Tua's projecting 5 points more than the next best guy, and Tua got the ownership on that one.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody projecting different from anybody else here. You start with the actual raw projection. Browning is the highest fantasy points per dollar at 5,700. But him and Russell Wilson effectively have the same projection. I do not think that's going to happen. I think we're going to see really level ownerships across all of these guys. We might not even see anybody well above. I say we don't see anyone over 25%.
That's a turd hat bet for me. We definitely will see someone over 25%.
There it is. Let's write that one down. I'm not argumentative. I don't think we will. I think based on the number of them, right? I think all of Wilson, Goff, Browning, Minshew, I don't know about Mullins, but Trubisky are all in the I could play a little bit of these guys. Like, who are you fading?
I agree.
Let's start there. Who are you fading if you had to?
Nick Mullins is my first fade.
Burns, what do you think?
Minshew.
Gardner is a fade for you on the road at the Steelers?
Yep.
Okay.
Steelers are a really good defense.
That's fair.
And I'll be fading somebody else in that game too.
Who are you fading in that game? Talk to me. Pittman?
I'll be fading Gardner Minshew. I'll be fading Zach Moss completely. And
spoiler alert,
Pittman.
we're jumping over to the running back position.
And I'll fade Pittman, but I like Josh Downs in this game better.
Interesting. Okay. The Moss thing I understand. I mean, we'll look over at the ownerships for running backs, and I'm assuming that's just a Moss sucks fade at this point. Like, he's burned me twice. No more burns for Burns. Burns got too many burns from Zach Moss, man. That it does sting.
It didn't sting as much as others. I mean, others went like 65, 70% ownership in the first week with him 2 weeks ago and then lowered it. But I was like, yeah, I still got burned a couple of times.
That's not really a good excuse to fade a player. Just saying. That's not
I don't
like
fade players to fade them. There's numbers that back up the fade.
Okay. We'll talk about that when we get to that. So, I think you have a difficult time. I have a difficult time looking at the slate and saying, oh, this is the guy that I want to be loading up on. That's why I don't think we're going to see such high ownerships, BobbyWow. I just look at it and you go, well, yeah, Browning, sure. Yeah, okay. He's been doing pretty good. Jared Goff is fine. Good player. Expensive. Russell Wilson hasn't really gotten much done, in terms of fantasy production all year, but you never know. At least the game projects well. So I don't know. The QB position really weird. I won't even fade Trubisky. He wasn't that bad last week. In the end of the day, I think Trubisky put up 20 fantasy points last week.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, you got a 21. So I'm not going to cry about a guy who could get me 21. I think a 21 might be the highest scoring QB on the slate.
Wow. Could be. Yeah, could be.
I'm not betting a turd hat on it. I'm just saying there's no guarantee that any quarterback on the slate is getting 25 plus. This group? Nope. I don't think so. It could happen.
In terms of ceiling, do you feel like there's one or two guys that stands out to you?
I hate to say it. I think it's Browning.
Oh wow.
Who has a ceiling here that looks at good at all? Goff?
I think Russell's got a better ceiling than any of them.
Russell Wilson hasn't been north of the 25-point
I know it's
barrier.
We're picking from these quarterbacks that it's not a good pool of quarterbacks. I mean, Goff has a tough matchup. I mean, Denver has gotten better and better each week defensively, so he's got a tough matchup. Though he's at home, which works for him, but still a tough matchup.
I think the more I look at it, I think you're right, Geek. This makes sense. It probably will be a little more spread.
Yeah, I don't see this one when I look at it and I go, my first thought is I always know what the field's going to do because my initial reaction, right? My initial reaction, I'm playing this guy, right? And then you always want to take your initial reaction and like don't do that if you want to try to win at DFS. That's a whole other story. But I just looked at this and I'm like, who would I play? And I don't know. You know,
I do think Trubisky and Mullins will be very, very low. They will be separate from the group.
Mullins has a great set of weapons. Always like the weapons on the Vikings, right? But yeah, beyond that, it's an interesting one. I think it might be. I think I hate stacking Russell Wilson. His weapons are terrible. I don't even know how he scores points. Like you watch the game, it's kind of like Sam Howell, where you're like, "Oh, he put up 25. Who scored?" And you just check the entire roster for anybody else who did anything, and you're like, "Oh, no one did anything. I don't know how he got those points. I still can't figure out how he gets the scores." Like I watch the game and I'm like, "Oh, who's that? Oh, that's
so true.
That's the third string tight end just caught a touchdown. Oh, here's the fullback. Who is getting the touchdowns?" Same thing seems to happen with Wilson. I don't even know. It's Cortland Sutton perennially overpriced, like criminally overpriced. Jerry Jeudy can't catch a pass. Hasn't learned about the toe drag yet. Maybe when he's 30, they'll teach him that move. You get all the way.
Let it all out, Geek. Let it all out.
I'm letting it flow today. High energy. All right. So anyway, I don't really see. Do you guys have a favorite? Is there even a lot to talk about, or we want to just kind of talk about this in the context of stacks? Give a preferred.
Let's talk about stacks. I like Trubisky for leverage. That's where I'll be going for my leverage, and I'll be underweight on Browning, and virtually nothing with Gardner and Mullins. That's what the way I'm going. But I think stacks make the most sense.
You're going no Gardner, no Mullins, and stacking Trubisky and Browning. So, is Browning just the obvious Jamar Chase?
No, I'm under on Browning.
Oh, you're going under on Browning. So where are you going over?
Russ, Goff, and Trubisky are where I'm going over.
Interesting. Okay, so how are you stacking those guys? The obvious ways, I'm assuming, but share with us.
Do we want to go to running back first, or we want to talk?
No. Just talk about the stacks, and then we'll talk the running back, and we'll get into a little bit of wide receiver, just as a slate group, not so much as a stack starting point.
Yeah, I think starting with Trubisky, we talked about Deontay Johnson last week. It didn't come to fruition quite as much, but Mitch loves Deontay, and I think those two have the potential to be a top scoring stack. I also don't mind Pat Freiermuth. He saw a healthy amount of targets last week as well. And the beauty of these stacks is they're relatively inexpensive. So you can pay up for guys like Chase on a slate where there might not be a ton of touchdowns scored, but the PPR upside with those guys is huge. So that's kind of the strategy with Trubisky and his stacks to me.
Yeah, I could see that. Again, Trubisky looked horrible for long periods of time last week, but then comes through with an acceptable performance. Maybe knocked a little rust off.
Threw the ball 35 times. It is the Patriots. I mean, they're pretty good defense.
Yeah, 190 yards not leaves a little something to be desired.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
this is not a slam dunk. He'll be low. He'll be under 10% ownership for a reason. But I like attacking this spot.
Worth taking the shots. And the other one you mentioned was
I think Goff and Russ, both stackable. Yeah, and nothing crazy here. I think Goff, keep it simple with Amon-Ra or Laporta, or even both. Haven't really needed the double stacks because Goff hasn't gotten there yet. But those are the two obvious guys. Jameson Williams, another deep threat, probably get you 0 points, but he could catch an 80-yard touchdown and break the slate. And then with Russ, I know you hate him, and he's been really bad. Jerry Jeudy has been more and more involved the last couple of weeks. So I've got some, I'm kind of intrigued in getting a little overweight on him, at least in my Russ stacks.
At least he's cheap.
He's really cheap.
Did he blow that game last week?
Yeah, that was rough.
Burns, how about you? Talking about QB stacks and just how to attack the slate in general. Are you pretty much on board with what Bobby said there? Any differences?
No, I like Mitchell. When I started looking at the slate, it was Mitch Trubisky that I was looking at more and more because, you know, the numbers are there for him. There's a couple of spots and with these guys, like Jared Goff's going to have a tough matchup regardless. It's a really tough matchup. Likewise with Browning, he's got a tough matchup with the Minnesota Vikings this week. None of these guys have really decent to great matchups. Mitchell Trubisky might have one of the better matchups. That's why I like him a lot. I do like Freiermuth this week. I was with him, and I like Deontay Johnson as well. Don't forget George Pickens. But I like Russ this week in this matchup. Detroit has been very susceptible to giving up a lot of fantasy points to the quarterback position as well as the wide receiver position. So I don't mind doubling it up with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy in this one. You don't really need the tight ends, but if you want a low salary / low ownership tight end, then go with the Denver's tight end. But I don't think you need to go there. And don't forget, utilize the tight end in the flex this week. I mean, you can get Laporta in the flex with Freiermuth and have a really good starting lineup there. And then you pair the quarterback and wide receiver stacks, and you're looking at pretty good lineups.
Good memory. The 3-game slates, and all the back testing that we've done. The shorter the slate, the more the chance that you're going to get a tight end in there in the flex. Now, you need that value a lot of times. So it is a good reminder that these type of slates, do not be afraid to double down on the tight end position. I'm pretty in agreement. Like I don't really have a favorite. If I'm handcrafting, I certainly am going to build with Jake Browning as well. I don't mind the Jared Goff at home in the dome. That game in general in the dome in the wintertime, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Like it is a bonus when we get indoor games in December. It's just no chance of weather, nothing ruining it, no wind or any of that crap. So I do like that one game, of course, and the higher total. But there's a reason why I don't really see none of these quarterbacks are really gaining a ton of traction in terms of heavily owned. And I think we're going to see a very, very spread out ownership on this slate in general. Now, let's jump over to the running back position for the Saturday only. And we'll just talk about this group. Two of the teams have two-headed monsters at the running back position with Gibbs, Montgomery, and for the Lions, and of course Warren and Harris for the Steelers. If you take a look, do I have matchups loaded up? Yes. Steelers, right? Let's get the Steelers game. Here we go. It looks like under the new coach or coaching staff that Najee Harris is getting more of the work, right? So let's take a look at just some of the rushing numbers here. 42% of the carries versus 25. Snap count 57, 52. So it's still really close. BobbyWow, is there a preference here? Anything that stands out to you about this pairing? Do you think the new OC is sort of going back to Najee Harris? At one point we thought it was going to shift to Warren.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of being underweight in a scenario like this. I think that's where I land. Both guys are in a good spot, but anytime we have a two-headed monster, especially with the Steelers, it just feels weird to play them. I think there's 3 or 4 much better plays out there, and so I'll probably be underweight. I tend to gravitate toward Warren. He's the more talented player. He's got more pass catching upside. We saw Trubisky dumping the ball off to him a couple times last week. So I prefer him over Najee. I'll be well underweight Najee.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the rest of this running back group in general. Of course, we got Zach Moss again, who, by the way, has, for both of the last 2 weeks, given you all the metrics that you want that would produce a smash game from a running back outside of the actual production itself, like the carries, the touches, the volume, the inside the 10, the goal line carries. I kept turning on the Colts games, and all it was Moss getting stopped at the goal line. Like, oh, there's another one. There's another one. Oh, penalty. Now we're going to go from 10 yards. All right, goodbye. Goal line carry. Just could not do it. And it's amazing the variance in the NFL, because this guy played exactly the same role earlier this season, was putting up 25s and 30s just because he's getting in the end zone.
So you got something to do with Anthony Richardson? I feel like he played a big role in that.
Maybe.
But
maybe.
Either way.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe not. I don't really know. Like, all I know is whatever it was, it happened.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, that's rough. But, so now he's going to be the chalk again. And now, will he be the highest owned? I don't know. We haven't reformulated the projection for Ty Chandler since the Madison out news. As of yet, we will, I'm sure, soon. But do you think Ty Chandler could spike to the highest owned?
No, I would be surprised. I mean, I think we're in agreement. He's one of the best 2 plays, if not, maybe the best play. I would be surprised if he ended up higher owned than Zach Moss. What do you think, Burns?
Yeah, I don't see anyone getting like Ty Chandler getting that high. I just don't see it. Zach Moss, I really don't understand why he's this high owned. I get it. This matchup is very difficult for him. This is not a good matchup for the entire Indianapolis Colts offense. I just don't get why the ownership is 40+% on him. I think he's gonna fail. He's got a really high fail rate this week.
Is it because of the defense? What's the difference between this week and last week for Moss?
Cincinnati's defense it's not a good defense versus a run. Basically anything against the entire offense, their defense is not good. But the prior week is probably the best indicator of how Moss is going to do versus Pittsburgh. Tennessee and Pittsburgh are essentially in and around the same type of defense against the run. They both stop it very well, though Pittsburgh has a little bit of pores to them versus Tennessee's defensive front. The reason why they don't score in and around the goal line is that their goal line offensive line is very bad. So when you're in and around 24th, 25th in the league as an offensive line, that means your offensive line down and around the red zone is going to be that much worse. So Zach Moss is just a guy. He's nothing special. Yeah. He's no special running back whatsoever. And I said this last week on the pre-lock show. He is just a guy. And been right 2 weeks in a row. I don't think this guy does anything this week. I think if he gets you 15 points, you're really, really lucky.
So let's talk about where we could focus at running back. One thing, again, I'm noticing and just looking at the ownership projections is there is not an obvious ownership spike that we need to strongly fade. We don't have it. They're all kind of low owned. Even Moss relative to Mixon, Moss and Mixon kind of the same. Then you got Gibbs and David Montgomery and Javonte all effectively the same at around 30% ownership. So Mixon Moss slightly above the rest. And then it'll be pretty even across Gibbs, Mixon, Montgomery, Javonte. And my guess is that Ty Chandler will elevate himself up into that zone of 30% as well. So if you had to pick 3 to go heaviest on this slate, what are the 3 that you're going with, Burns?
Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and I'll add a 4th in. One of the Pittsburgh running backs and the running back from Minnesota. I'm fading completely Zach Moss and Joe Mixon. 100% fade.
Mixon as well. All right. Interesting. Bobby, wow, what's your
matchups.
reaction to what Burns just said?
It's tough for me to fade someone entirely on a 3-game slate, but I totally get the being way underweight on Mixon. I think, the GPP special that I'm going to be jumping in on is actually Chase Brown. So, naturally I'll be underweight on Mixon. But yeah, I think it makes sense.
I love that you mentioned Chase Brown. He was a showdown turd that really came. I feel like he came through with a ton of yardage last week. I don't remember.
2 weeks ago was the yardage on the showdown. Last week he scored a touchdown.
Oh, so
he crushed last week.
Let's take a look at the returns here.
I think him and Mixon were in the optimal together.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, see a guy like this, all of a sudden he gets a few targets. It wasn't the rushing.
That's what he did at Illinois.
Yeah, it's not those 9 carries that are getting you. And of course, the inevitable Gibbs and Montgomery together. And on a 3-game slate, the answer is yes. I don't need to pass that along. You could play Warren and Mixon together. You could play Chase Brown and Mixon, or Chase Brown and Mixon together. Sorry, Warren and the other fucking Najee Harris. You could play any pair together.
Yes.
Burns, so Ty Chandler, where does he fall in all of this?
I think Ty Chandler, he's going to get a little bit higher than Chase Brown. I think his ownership will fall probably between 5 to 15%, whereas Chase Brown might be. Chase Brown's probably going to be. He's going to be around 5 to 10.
Madison's out. I think Ty Chandler's going to float all the way up into the 25% range.
He could, but nobody really has seen him all year. Only in limited roles with Minnesota, so he could get up around 20-25% simply because Madison is out. But Chase Brown's not going to get it. I don't see him getting anything higher than 10%.
Yeah, no.
And actually, where you leverage the field is having Ty Chandler and Chase Brown in the same lineup.
I will have a lot of that.
Interesting. I like it. I find that you got to get unique on these. The best way to go is if you see ownership getting a little too high on somebody, go below. Like for exposure. And guys, we're talking about this game. This is tournament strategy. That's what this show is about. So our goal is not to sit here and say, what is the chalkiest cash lineup that you can build? What we're looking at are, how do you win this tournament? What are strategies that we can use to win a 3-team contest where, in some weeks, like I said, we saw earlier this week, we saw a game in which someone like Tua was going to be crazy high owned. And of course, Tyreek Hill was going to be 80-90% owned. And then we discussed, the game theory component of he's in such a good spot, but at 80 to 90% ownership, it's really hard to win by just going heavy on that guy. That's not how you win. So I'm not the only spot that so far we seem to have identified where we expect like a crazy high ownership is Moss. And I actually don't think it's going to happen. I think the field will all kind of have memory of the disaster and potentially just bring him down below his projection as well. So we might see, that just happen anyway, just because of the last couple weeks of disaster. Any other thoughts on this running back group? What about Javonte Williams? No one's talking about him. Obviously, the Lions are a pretty good defense, but so what? They got that little second over here, scares everybody away. Oh, can't play a running back against the scary red low number. Should we ignore that? Javonte's coming off a pretty big week. 17 carries, bunch of targets, almost 20 points. It's not bad.
I think he's as playable as most anyone else. Yeah.
Is there these are all kind of the same guy, aren't they?
Detroit's been pretty good against the run. That's my concern with it. But 18 carries, 18 touches.
Here we go. Let's take a look at the power rankings here and see what this shows. I forgot to do this at the beginning. So Minnesota, Cincinnati. Obviously, the Vikings must be pretty good against the run, as they're only projected to allow 79 rushing yards to the Bengals. That's pretty low. Steelers 144 rushing yard projection. That's a big number. That's your Warren and your Najee Harris, right? 144 yard. And then Detroit 166. So yeah, that's a good projection for the Lions and their pair as well. Actually, that's the best of them all. You think Denver is still skewed by the, Denver's been much better recently, but these numbers are a little bit skewed by what they were doing earlier in the season. I'm just looking through the passing yardage numbers to see if anybody stands out. Unfortunately, you can't look at what the Vikings numbers are because Nick Mullins is starting, so it's completely irrelevant. Final thoughts, BobbyWow, on the running back position.
I think it's relatively straightforward. Not a ton of separation between these two guys, but if you want to get different, like Bernsey said, don't be afraid to put a little Chase Brown in there. I think he's probably the key to taking down a tournament. Could fail, but he'll be low owned. So the idea of putting Chase Brown with Ty Chandler is really intriguing.
Do you have a preference between Gibbs or Montgomery?
Gibbs for me. He's got the upside. He had the bulk of the snaps last week. So if he's going to be there, if he's going to see 60, 65% of the snaps, I'm all over that.
Was that not situational? I'm asking. I don't know.
That's a good question. I mean, he had
Gibbs 63%, right? Last week. Versus 35%.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't even see it because I blocked it with our faces. That's always fun. Gibbs 63-35. Similar rushing percentages. Gibbs a couple more targets. So he was just on the field a little bit more. Let's see if that was anything situational. Yeah, I mean, it could have been. They were just playing from behind. That's what I thought. So, but hard to say. Either way, Gibbs is probably the more explosive player. Montgomery is probably the more likely one to smash in a touchdown or two on the goal line. So, there's that. All right, let's jump over to the wide receivers on this one. I've got them sorted by ownership. First thoughts here, guys. You definitely have a nice group of studs up top. Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Chase, and Pittman. Then we go to sort of section 2 here with Cortland Sutton a little overpriced for his role. Higgins, Addison, Deontay Johnson. So the Pittsburgh boys. And then I call it sort of level 3 with the turd. So let's start in the stud zone here. Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, Michael Pittman. All good. We love them. We love these guys, right? Jefferson coming off the injury. We don't know what to expect there. Is Jefferson almost on? Can we play Jefferson with Mullins coming off the injury? Like, how much exposure to Justin do I really need? Not, so much mystery. BobbyWow. It's a lot of mystery.
Yeah, I guess. Is he that much worse than anyone below him? Like, to me, he's got still has similar upside to anybody near his price range. So I don't know. I suppose with Nick Mullins, you could make that argument, but because it's a 3-game slate, if he's going to be lower owned, and it feels like he's going to come in lower than that, don't you think? 35%. I think he'll be the lowest owned of those guys up top.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's projecting below Jamar Chase or above Jamar Chase, because to me, Jamar Chase got a quarterback we all kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about Nick Mullins. Like I said, I remember him starting for San Francisco like 5 years ago, but what the fuck does that mean? Plus, it was San Francisco. You could take nothing from a San Francisco. You take Brock Purdy and drop him on the Jets, he's going to suck like he's freaking Zach Milson. You can't trust anything that comes off of San Francisco once it leaves. Jimmy Garoppolo looked like Tom Brady Part 2 when he was playing for San Francisco for a minute.
I saw a picture of Brock Purdy like smiling by a pizza. They said, Christian McCaffrey, Shanahan, Kittle they were all baking a pizza together, and all Purdy had to do was put the pepperonis on top.
Yeah, that sounds about
right.
They
baked it. They put it in the oven. They did all the work.
They're making the dough, and Brock Purdy's like just flinging pepperonis.
And he's the only one in the picture smiling with it.
I did it. I did it. Now let's not diss on. You know what? the reality is Purdy, we're giving him a hard time because he was drafted in the 7th round. We're biased. And that is biased. That is called prejudice.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. You didn't know that I'm very aware of prejudice. Fucking live with that shit. We're prejudicing him for being picked 7th round. We all automatically assume that he sucks because he got picked in the 7th round.
He's been pretty good this year.
If he was a 1st round draft pick, he would be the MVP. There would be no discussion. Oh, well, great pick. But 7th round pick. That's why we it's all psychological. We haven't seen anything out of him to say he's not good. Anyway, all right, let's back into it. Suck me out of my focus here into other things. So didn't Mullins throw 6? I think you're thinking of not Mullins. There's a different Peterson. Peter, I can't remember his name, but there was a different backup quarterback that threw 6 interceptions for the Bills and then kept getting jobs. I can't remember his name.
Nathan Peterman.
Yeah, Peterman. There we go. How do you know? Because he's on the Bears now. Oops. All right. So of this top group, is there? I mean, I think it's very obvious that Amon-Ra, you're always going to stack him with Goff, and Jamar Chase, you're going to stack him with his guy. Pittman, I think, is probably standalone playable, 16 targets like every game. Any preferences here, guys, or just mixing them in?
Probably mixing them in with a preference to, I don't mind JJ this week. Maybe he goes a little bit under-owned to what we're normally accustomed to for him on a 3-game slate.
We said that last week, and they got hurt in like the second play, and it just ruined the whole thing.
That's the only problem.
Yeah. I don't love the Q tag. I don't love any of that. Long-term injury, Q tag. There's a lot going on here with JJ. I'm kind of happy that, if you had to make a decision in your fantasy team in the playoffs, like, are you playing? You probably didn't make the playoffs if you have JJ, actually. So you don't have to make a decision. You're good.
No, you probably didn't.
Everybody with Justin Jefferson's like, no, we're good. No decision to be made. We didn't make the playoffs. So to everybody who drafted him this year, sorry for you. I have him on some dynasty teams where they're so awesome. I still made the playoffs, and I'm like, what do I do? And I'm making that decision. Should I play him or should I play I think I put like a Kenny Walker on the bench for Justin Jefferson. Got to do it. I'm playing Jefferson. All right. So the next group here, and this is where we start to get into picking and choosing players, right? Cortland Sutton getting a 30. That's going to be what his ownership is. When you play Russ, you got to choose one of these guys.
It's a lot of ownership on him.
It's way too much ownership on him. He never puts up a number worthy of a 62. As a matter of fact, he at the $6,400 price tag. This is really important. The math of these games. Sure, he could be better now, worse now, coming on strong. He's had exactly 0 games this year where you were like, "Oh, I'm glad I played him for 6,400." Exactly 0. You need a 26 to be worth playing it, and it could be a little lower on this type of a slate, but he peaked at 21, 6, 12, 18, 24 plus the points. You're talking 25, 26 to keep on pace with winning a tournament. So he's hitting 0 for 14 so far on this salary level.
On a main slate. It's different on a 3-gamer.
That's right. You might. So on this slate, this 21 might be enough.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think it definitely would be.
Yeah. I wouldn't say 100%. I'm not going to say 100%. Who would I start in the regular season? Zeke or Chandler? It's Chandler. I'd go Chandler over Zeke. Zeke's playing from behind. I don't know. Now I'm thinking about it more. Now I'm not sure.
Probably just need 1 touchdown by Zeke, right?
It's receptions. He needs receptions. But I think
but he's talking about season long though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's PPR season long. It's not. What are you playing on Yahoo?
No, I don't play Yahoo. I don't play that shit. But I'm just saying, I don't know what he's playing on.
It's PPR.
I don't know what site he's playing on, and I don't know if it's just standard or if he is playing PPR.
Oh my goodness! If you're not playing PPR in your season long, you ask me a fucking question about it, and don't say that. I am automatically.
I am just saying. I don't know if he didn't preface. He didn't preface that it was PPR.
Yahoo standard scoring, and from 2005. Not only would you get no PPR, but instead of FOB, it was waiver priorities.
I'm starting Zeke 100% of the time.
You're starting Zeke over Ty Chandler.
1,000%.
Not even 100.
Did you see him last week? Did you see Zeke last week?
It looked good.
Ramondre out. He did. He got the ball every snap. Basically, he played 91% of the snap.
Yeah.
He had a target percentage of 31%. Give me Zeke every day of the week.
I love it.
That's how you beat KC. You beat him on the ground.
Yeah. Okay. That's the shit I want to hear. I love the strong take, BobbyWow. Let's go.
I hate it because I hate Zeke, but just on paper, it makes sense.
Let's go. Bobby already convinced me, by the way. That's all I needed to hear. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. Go with Zeke. Chiefs defense is good too, though, in fairness.
They are good.
All right, so where were we? Okay, we're talking wide receivers. No flag plans for anybody in the expensive zone. No one wants to plant the flag.
No.
I like them all. Jamar Chase is good. He's getting peppered with targets. I like the matchup for Chase. Pittman, again, he's coming off of 11 last week, 16, 13, 12. The dude gets double-digit targets every week. There's nothing wrong with that. Amon-Ra also, not a big game last week, but a great season and a high floor player. I like them all.
He's a special player to average 1 point per target, and Michael Pittman has basically done that. Yeah.
So let's come down to this next group. T. Higgins, really not getting it done with Browning. I don't want too much of this. I feel like Browning is only going to support one wide receiver.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think Browning makes me nervous. Chase Brown had an 80-yard touchdown last week. Without that little screen pass and Chase Brown breaking tackles, Browning's numbers look relatively pedestrian, and Jamar Chase came back down to earth. I'm just a little concerned.
I mean, it can go all ways. I mean, if you go back the week before that, 32 for 37 was insanity. So you never really know what you're going to get.
True.
I wouldn't be confident in any of these quarterbacks. Again, I don't have a single quarterback on the slate where I'm like, that's the guy.
And I think that's what I'm saying is that's why I'm not heavy on a receiver up here. I don't know that anyone is jumping out.
This is a good question, Kozrez. The optimizer setup and how to do it. My experience is that you should not force a stack with two. Even on a 3-game slate, I would not force it. I don't mind the sim boost, so I would do a stack with one. I would include a smaller sim boost than usual, probably 10 to 15%. I have to see it. I got to run it. I got to observe it. But you don't want to force two. Because on this kind of slate, I don't think that the quarterback matters that much. Guys, this is what I'm telling you. I personally don't think that the quarterback is that critical. I think they're all going to score the same. Burns, am I crazy? Sometimes the shit I say comes true. You got to admit, every once in a while, it does come true. I'm not saying always, not even most of the time, but once in a while, like twice a day when the broken clock, that's like me with these calls. I don't think they're gonna differentiate. I think these quarterbacks are all scoring, 16 to 22.
Yeah, I mean, we all go a little crazy every now and again, right? No, I mean, you got to roll it however which way you want to roll it, but there's nothing crazy about whatever on a 3-game slate.
But for me, because I'm thinking that way, I don't think you need this QB +2 stack. I just think you want to get the best players in there. You don't force it. BobbyWow, you're nodding too.
Agreed.
Kind of on board with that?
Yes, I love that approach.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it. All right, so continuing on through this wide receiver group, guys, the next level down, you got Higgins, Addison, Deontay Pickens, Jerry Jeudy, Josh Downs, right? You got the secondary group. Obviously, I kind of like to pick out the ones I don't like because the likes are there, but I don't know. It's hard for me to get on board with Addison if Justin Jefferson is playing at this price. The other guy I just can't get on board with is Jerry Jeudy. I mean, if stinking was a profession, this guy would be the CEO. This guy's the CEO of Sucktown. Where are the good averaging 8.2 fantasy points? Of course, he's going to do it this week, but I just want to say this guy fucking sucks. Like, he hasn't crossed the 13-point barrier all year, and he's one of just 2 wide receivers that are even mildly viable on his team. Like, how is this possible?
I think it's quarterback with Jerry Jeudy. Before Russ was there, Jeudy was actually a pretty good. He had pretty good fantasy production in his rookie year. I really think it's Russ. I don't know. It's just me.
Burns, what's going on? I mean, BobbyWow, what's going on with this kid? Why does he suck?
Look, I think it is offensive scheme. I think it's his attitude. It's a combination of a bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, he's a talented player, and he's cheap. So I don't know that it warrants being significantly underweight on him.
You're playing him?
Yeah.
This dude drops passes like it's a potato coming out of a microwave after 7 minutes in the oven. Hot potato. You see him dropping passes last week?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Oh, brutal.
He had a good matchup. Sucked.
You know where he belongs? He should he should be on the Chiefs. He belongs with the group on the Chiefs. Perfect fit for that offense. Another pass dropper. They need more of those. The Chiefs are just gathering every player that drops passes as a wide receiver and just saying, Mahomes, you're good. You say you're so good. Try throwing to guys who can't catch. Now let's see.
Jeudy was great last year. He was
not great last year. BobbyWow, come on.
He was fine. He was good.
A couple of good games. I think great last year is a stretch. I made an all-time worst, a horrible dynasty trade with Kozlowski, where I gave him Deontay Johnson, and you're going to throw up, and Tank Dell, who at the time was a late third-round dynasty rookie pick for Jerry Jeudy.
Oh, God.
I haven't heard the end of it. Dude he texts me like pictures of Tank Dell like every day, just as a reminder. Every time Dell has a good weekend, he goes, "Did you see Dell?" Fucking prick. Pissed me off. Anyway, you guys don't react to that. You should be like, "Damn, that's a horrible trade, Kev. You suck." And it's true. I feel terrible about it.
Tank Dell's hurt.
Yeah, no, it's a dynasty, so it's forever.
Oh, okay.
I get to live with it forever. That's what I mean. It's a forever trade. It's really, really brutal. So Burns, you said Josh Downs?
Yeah, Josh Downs. I don't mind him this week.
It's interesting. Three targets, 3 receptions last week.
He's been he was better early on in the season, and he's kind of fluttering right now. But I don't know. There's going to be this game's tough. I mean, Pittsburgh's a tough defense, so he's 4,600. Maybe he gets 5 targets, 50 yards receiving, and maybe he gets across the end zone. I don't know. And that'll do it for you. 3-game slate, anything can happen, I guess.
Let's just stick in the cheap zone here. If you're going to make a lineup, one thing I'm noticing, there is cost prohibition on this slate. We've had some 3-game slates where you can kind of do whatever you want. That's not the case here with all the stud wide receivers that are available to us. You do want to spend some salary. In order to do it, you got to pay down in some spots. Are there any pay down spots that are really of interest at all? Because I think it looks pretty barren. After Josh Downs, KJ Osborne, meh. Tyler Boyd, meh. Josh Reynolds, meh. Alec Pierce, sure, but meh. Jameson Williams, none of these look great. All of them look really sketchy. BobbyWow, who's popping for you here? I know you mentioned Jameson Williams, but I mean, you can't have super confidence in 0 for 1.
No.
This is not where you're going to find your confident spot. Like this dude, if he gets 1 reception, it's a miracle.
I think of this group, he's the most likely to put up a double-digit score. But it's gross.
Mims Jr. can't really go here. The guy's averaging 4.9 points per game.
This whole group is really disgusting.
So how do you make a lineup?
We've got
extreme caution.
we've got cheap players. We got cheap quarterbacks relative to a main slate.
Maybe it's the tight ends that are going to save us.
We've got Jerry Jeudy priced down.
Oh, great. It's like, where do you want to get your 7-pointer from? Jerry Jeudy? Or do you want to try to get it from Marvin Mims for 1,000 less? Maybe that's what it is. I don't see any names here that stand out at all. Again, Jameson Williams fine. Alec Pierce had a big game a couple weeks ago. Let's not like completely ignore him, but it's not great. Tyler Boyd, it's fine, I guess. I really think you're fighting for 10 fantasy points from this group.
Maybe.
Tight ends. Let's look at it on the Dom station. I like seeing the ownership first. So tight end position, Sam Laporta, 32%. Not cheap, though. Expensive. Can't afford him. Sorry. Now, my favorite player is on this slate at the tight end position. He will be featured heavily in my lineups this week. You already know who it is.
Yeah.
It's my boy Tanner Hudson.
Tanner.
Not Troutman, Tanner Hudson. Love Tanner Hudson. Love him on this slate. Look how low he's going to be owned. Did these guys not know he used to be a quarterback? You know who else used to be a quarterback? You know who is a quarterback / tight end who I love? Taysom Hill. Yeah. It's the same thing.
Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow is kind of like a tight end also. Tim Tebow should have transitioned to tight end. He just never did it. Did he ever transition to tight end?
He did it too late.
No. It was too late?
He was, it was rough. We'll always have that game against the Steelers, but no. So Tanner Hudson, he's your guy?
Yeah, I love Tanner Hudson. Look at the price. 3,200. Guy gets 7 targets almost every time. I'm not looking for much. All I want is like a 9. And by the way, the reason I was just talking about all those shitty-ass wide receivers that you could pay down for is because this is the decision you're going to make in the flex. You're looking at Brandon Powell types. Marvin Mims Jr. hasn't crossed 5 fantasy points in his career, except for that one game.
He's a rookie.
You got to pay all the way up for Jerry Jeudy, who the last time he saw double-digit points in a game was when Beverly Hills 90210 was still on terrestrial television.
We should make a bet that Jerry Jeudy scores double-digit points.
He so is. When I go off on something, it always happens the opposite, by the way. If you ever want to know what to do in these things, just wait for me to like rant on a player. That is a lock, unless it's like Derek Carr. But besides him, when I rant on a player, they always go off. So, yeah, look for a monster game from Jerry Jeudy in this one. Sean G is saying the People's wide receiver is going to get involved. He hasn't been involved at all.
He caught it. He had a big catch last week, but it was one catch, and he played barely any snaps.
He does not play. So, yeah, I don't know about but anybody could do it. Listen, last night's game, as a reminder, the one guy I didn't play at all, and that it didn't matter in the end, but like I think his name was Trent Taylor or something like that.
Trent Tucker,
the WR4 for the Raiders, all of a sudden pops up with almost a touchdown, and then he gets the touchdown later, and you're like, really, Trent Tucker? Twice? He didn't even wind up in the nuts. That's how crazy that game was last night. But that's how crazy that was. But yeah, the reason I mentioned all those crappy wide receivers is because you do have to compare them with these cheaper tight ends. So, Burns, you're the tight end whisperer. Obviously, Sam Laporta and TJ Hockenson got those massive 193 ratings, got the DVP working for them, but they're also priced up, and it's not going to be the easiest thing. I think you have to look at Laporta and Hockenson and say, who would you rather have? And I'll give you the name.
Go
T.
for
Higgins? It. I think for the running backs, you kind of might want to rather have the running backs. Like that's the Moss price point. That's the price point where we can get a couple good running backs. But when you compare them to the wide receivers, that's the Cortland Sutton spot. That's the T. Higgins spot. And I don't know. I think both Laporta and Hockenson I like more than Cortland Sutton and T. Higgins in a basket.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like both of those guys this week. I've been trying lineups with both of them in it, and it works. But yeah, you got to get a crappy wide receiver in there to make it work, and your running backs have to be, you got to have low salaried running back in there too. So, but yeah, those are the top two guys on the slate, salary and against the metrics. Freiermuth, we talked about him earlier. He's probably 3 for me, and then I like Hudson this week too. So those are my 4, and then from there, I would go if I go anywhere from there on out. It's probably down to like an Indianapolis guy.
BobbyWow, you've been good with these Indianapolis tight ends. You've been of a whisperer, so to speak.
I got nothing. I just like when Mo Cox scores. We called him a couple times.
The Mo Alley Cox score from a couple of years ago, the 3 touchdown game call on Mo Alley Cox from 2 is legendary at this point. Like, it is spoken about in circles out far and wide. The Mo Alley Cox call. Who says Mo Alley Cox? And there it was. So this week we got Kylan Granson with a crime record like Charles Manson in the mix, as well as Will Mallory. Who the hell is Will Mallory? But yet here he is. Will Mallory is supposedly going to be almost as high owned as Tanner Hudson. Shame on the field. Shame on the field. But you know what I like about Kylan Granson here? It's just one thing. At 2,600, he doesn't need to do very much at all. Like, there at 2,600, it's so cheap that if he just catches 3 passes for 7 fantasy points, you might be winning the tournament.
Yeah, just off the bat. Mallory had a higher target percentage than Hudson.
That's why he's popping. Hang on a second. Let's see. Let me just check these teams. Hold on a minute here. So we've got. Yeah. All right. Hudson, 12% target share, but not on the field much. You know what? For as much as I like Hudson,
you like him a lot.
I do like it because they run the plays for him when he's on the field. I like those situations. It is very much like Taysom Hill. He's not out there all the time, but when they run him out, they're usually running a play to him, which is something I like because they're pre-designed plays to a player for 3K. And that means you usually get 5 or 6 targets. Fine by me. Like I said, I can easily play Drew Sample for 80% of the snaps, and he gets nothing, 0 targets. So that's why I like Mallory. That's why I like Hudson. But yeah, he was only out there 23% of the snaps, which is horrible. Let's see here. Mallory. Can you imagine look at this fucking team and what they do at tight end? Do you see these snap counts? No team does this.
We might be spending too much time down here because these are a bunch of turds.
But you got to play a tight end. You got to play these guys. Who are you playing?
I'm playing Laporta, Freiermuth.
You can't afford it. You're not playing Laporta. Can't afford him.
Absolutely. Oh, because I'm playing Jerry Jeudy, so I can do it.
I'll see. All right, we'll make a lineup in a minute. I'm saying you got to play these cheap guys. You got to find the ones because
I don't know. You can afford them.
Numbers aren't going to work.
When you play Chase Brown, Ty Chandler, Pat Fryer, I mean, you can. Yeah, it's more affordable than you think.
Let's build a lineup for this thing. So let's see how the numbers come together on this one. So
everyone's cheaper overall: wide receivers, quarterbacks.
Pick a starting QB.
Let's go Goff. We'll just try and
the most expensive. Okay.
Go expensive stack here. Goff and Laporta.
All right, we'll go Laporta, Goff. And I think if you have Goff in there, I feel like you want Amon-Ra in there. At least as a baseline.
I don't know that I want both, but yeah, I'll start there because that's the most expensive stack.
So you go to the running back spot, you go, all right. If I'm playing Goff, Montgomery is kind of negatively correlated, not my favorite. Gibbs is okay, but you want to go with these cheap guys? I mean, Chase Brown is not giving you a whole lot, but you're
plug-in Ty Chandler for sure.
Yeah, Ty Chandler, good play. Jamal,
we go with your boy Moss.
Boom, fine. Pick a cheap defense. I don't even care what the defense is.
Steelers.
You like the Steelers, but okay, fine. That's not that cheap, Burns. It's an expensive defense, but you like
the best
Burns
defense on the slate.
We didn't actually talk much defense. I think Bengals is in play.
Yeah, I mean they are.
Everyone's in play.
Everybody's in play.
Yeah, they're all
Broncos
in play.
are in play if we weren't building a golf lineup.
But
yeah, is there any defense that's not heavily playable here? These are all fine.
They're all. This slate is
what a weird slate.
I would say the top two defenses, Steelers, then Detroit, and then Indianapolis. Those are the defenses.
Detroit?
Mm-hmm.
Of all the defenses, the one that's going up against the actual starter who started off the season?
Yep.
You've got 5 defenses going up against the backup here.
Yeah.
That's a
Don't
rough
matter.
one. But
3-game slate.
Yeah, it does not matter. Look at the ownership. This is what I'm saying. Like, ownership's crazy. It's there's no chalk on defense. It's almost equal spread. This is a really weird. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to keep saying it, but it's a weird slate.
I think you plug Freiermuth in that lineup.
Patty the Muth. Okay. 54-5. So you got space for 2 more. Johnston. So normally from here, this is an interesting dilemma. A decision point. My sensibility is you'd want to get a stud in there and then go with a supreme kind of turd. At 5,400, I'm not really doing this. I don't like Addison enough to want to do something like that.
I mean, Pickens, Johnson, both those guys are fine.
I don't think you want to play them both in the same lineup.
No, I'm not both in the same lineup. And the other thing is, I think with Goff, if you're going to win with Goff, I don't think it's a double stack. I think it's one of Laporta or Amon-Ra. That's the way I would build.
What if we went Laporta and Gibbs with Goff,
Yes.
assuming that Gibbs maybe catches a touchdown pass?
That's
a little different. A little different of an approach. My general sensibility, though, would be to prefer Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra doesn't get a lot of touchdowns. Amon-Ra does most of his work PPR. I don't think he has a ton of 6. Actually, it's not bad. No, it's not been bad this year. It's been a while since. There it is.
So, and again, I think it's important to note we're building the expensive stack. Like this is the higher end.
Yeah, to put the most expensive tight end in your lineup is a lot. So at this point, 65.50. From here, I think I can. This is where you want to work it out with like a 65.5. So I want to go, if we're not using Amon-Ra, maybe Pittman. Yeah. Look, you wind up in the black hole of salaries.
But I mean, like, you're not going to, no matter what lineup you play, you're going to have to play one of Pickens, Judy, or Downs. I mean, one of those guys. Boyd even.
What it looks like. Let me see if I can squeeze. What does it take to squeeze in? All right, I know how to do this. Amon-Ra here, and you just double punt the tight end. The safer approach would be that. So let's see here. The other thing would be, I see different pathways. If I wanted to double stud, I can do it. But you need to pick a really cheap. You can't go with like Deontay Johnson here. You'd have to choose one of the cheap options, and it is not going to feel good at all to click on this button. So like the Mims Jr., and then you can maybe get. Oh yeah, you could squeeze another running back in there or a Moss. Or Laporta fits as well. So you can get to Laporta this way as well in the flex, right? So if I wanted to flip that around. And actually, there, almost enough for, here. Laporta.
I would put Laporta's odds of outscoring every wide receiver at 35%.
Really? So you love Laporta?
You could probably make the same argument for Hawk.
Yeah.
There's just not like a Devontae Adams guy on the slate with a good quarterback throwing him the football that you can count on. That's the thing. That's why I'm not trying to do everything I can to pay up for 2 studs at wide receiver. I don't know that you need to.
Take him out. The problem is that pay down options look even worse.
They do.
That's the problem. I mean, I'm not trying to get up there because I think, Justin Jefferson's going to put up 35, 40. I'm worried that, most of these guys down here are looking at, it's like Jerry Jeudy stinks. Got to play some Jeudy now because I ripped him so much. But what's he been doing? 6s, 7s most weeks? Josh Downs, same thing. Where's the safe points? They're nowhere. They're nowhere to be found. Maybe it's the tight end. You know what? I think it's the running back. Can't play Montgomery. Yeah, put in Zach Moss. 800 left.
Just for reference, the Bengals put up 34 points last week. Jamar Chase scored 5.9 fantasy points.
Yeah, no, it was terrible.
There's no one on this slate.
Who put up the points for them? It was Mixon.
Hudson. Chase Brown had a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
He what's his name? Ran one in, the quarterback.
Brown, yeah, he runs one in. The Chase Brown. Oh yeah, I forgot about Chase Brown. You know what? That's the guy who I forgot about.
They had a defensive score too, didn't they?
Here you go. Wait a minute. You just reminded me about Chase Brown. I put in Chase Brown. Wait a second. Now I don't need as many turds. Boom.
There you go.
That looks. Oh.
Now Chase Brown could get you a 1. So I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. That's the way I'm going.
This last spot gives you some, you can put Brown, Pickens, Downs, you have some flexibility. I like that. Okay. All right. So anyway, the more important part of this exercise wasn't like what lineup did they just come up with fucking around. This was more just about how did the salaries come together. That was the most expensive QB with the most expensive tight end. And you're right. Relatively not that difficult as long as you're willing to not force in, multiple of the 7K and up wide receivers into lineup. So, all right, kudos to DraftKings.
Yeah,
for that. Final thoughts on this 3-game slate, guys. Burns,
double running back, double tight end.
Bobby, wow,
exactly.
Double running back. You said double tight end, Bobby.
Sorry, yeah, flex running back and flex tight end. You want one of those two things.
Wide receiver 0 in the flex.
Not loving the wide receiver. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm fine with both of those approaches. And, my big thing here is, of course, if you're running lineups on the optimizer, make sure to what the fuck was I just saying? If you're running the optimizer, make sure to allow players. I was reading your private, the message in the private got me confused. If you're running lineups on the optimizer, make sure to allow at least 1 or 2 players versus defense. That's number 1. Number 2, my big take on this slate is I don't think the QBs are going to separate themselves all that much from one another. So I would be less into extreme stacking and more about just trying to make lineups built around like the good plays on the slate and hope that they all come together. Correlation is less critical on a short slate, especially one in which none one of these games is super likely to be like, oh wow, that team went off for 60 like the Raiders on Thursday night. Like I don't see that necessarily happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it doesn't really. None of these games really set up like that, and I think it's more likely than not that we don't see a breakaway score from any of the QBs to where it's that much of a difference maker, if that makes sense.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for this one, guys. 3-game slate. Good luck in this. We're going to be making lineups for it. There's a tiers version as well, which I'm excited to mess with. We didn't really talk the Fanduel pricing. Fanduel's a little bit tighter on the salaries, but I think we get the general picture of how the slate's going to go down. Of course, we will be back at a later time with tournament tactics for the Sunday only slate, but we wanted to cover the Saturday slate first and sort of just be ready for it. We're excited. I love 3-game slates. So good luck, everyone. We'll be around in the DFS Army Discord answering questions, talking about the slate as well. We'll see you guys in there. Good luck this weekend, everyone.